I've been interested in working with fabric since I was very small. My mom and my grandmother and my big sister sewed their own clothes. They made clothes for me, and so I emulated them and started sewing. I went to school my first year of college for fine art and then continued at FIT to become a fashion designer. I worked in the industry for a few years doing sleepwear. Then when I had kids, I started making baby quilts, you know, just like my grandmother did. And then when they got older, I said, gee, you know, I used to think of myself as an artist. What am I doing making traditional baby quilts? I should be expressing myself, you know, in my art through fabric, because I always have. So I started exploring different ways to manipulate fabric to make art quilts, and the art quilt kind of thing was going strong. So then it was 10 years ago that I heard this radio program about ancient artifacts being buried in Egypt, and they were discovered, and that set off what I would say my archaeology series and my whole trajectory that's happening today with what I'm interested in. I use fabric, stitch, and paint, and metal leaf, and I've done a little bit of sculpting with safety pins, brass safety pins. Currently, I have two pieces in the Please Touch exhibit at the Monmouth Museum in Lincroft, New Jersey. It's on the property of the Brookdale Community Campus, and that is because it's a Please Touch sculpture exhibit. I have the linen vessel, and I have a horse that I made out of safety pins, and it's completely solid safety pins, one joined to the next with no other way of attaching them. So to tell you a little bit about my process, I use 100% linen. It's a decorator weight linen. It's got a nice heavy weave that reminds me of antique textiles. And then I will spray paint the background an antique bronze color, and stencil. I cut my own stencils, and then I stencil lines on it so that I use those as a guide for sewing. Then I free motion machine stitch along the lines, and it's essentially scribbling with the machine, stitching one direction, and then to fill it in a little bit thicker, I stitch back over it the other direction, then I drop down a line and continue stitching. Now this free motion machine stitching means that I have lowered the feed dogs or the grippers on the machine so that the machine is no longer pulling the fabric through the machine like traditionally. And because there's nothing feeding the fabric through the machine, I move the fabric freely underneath the foot. And so it's like drawing freehand instead of sewing. I use a heavier weight black thread to give me some dimension, because after I do the stitching process, I go over this with paint, and then I attach a metal leaf to the surface and make it very dimensional, reflective, and I want those stitches to be able to hold up to the other layers. So I just start stitching and filling in, and when one line is done, I drop down to the next line, I stitch one direction, back the other direction, and I keep going. One day when I was doing this, I noticed that I had actually stitched a word, and I wasn't quite sure it was a word, but when I saw the word, I became a little bit aware that maybe in the meditative process of doing the stitching that words were appearing, that maybe subconsciously, you know, something was on my mind. And sure enough, in that one piece, and it was one of the first pieces I did, 3 words appeared, and it was war, no more, and promise. I guess that's 4 words. But it turned out that I was listening to the news all afternoon, and it was, you know, about the war and losses, and it was very depressing. So I started to make it a point to see if words were appearing in my work and where my head was at, and I started using those words to be the title for the work. I think the creative process happens much the same with a lot of artists, and because our brains are just like little computers, you get all this input and all this input, and then the input starts connecting to other things and making patterns. And I think in an artist's brain, those patterns are usually connections that other people don't make. And so you've got these weird confluence of ideas, they attach to each other, and then you go, wow. Instead of saying that's weird and tossing it out, you go, that's interesting, let's think about that. And so you let it roll in your head, and before you know it, you've come up with an original idea, you know, something that's new and different. And I definitely think that's the way my brain works. So, you know, I'm aware of environmental situations. You know, the lack of bees on my flowers in the front yard is freaking me out, you know, and all kinds of different ideas that I hear on the radio and TV. You don't have to look too far up, you know, we're bombarded with these things all the time. And then it kind of, it comes out in your work, you know, all those things you really care about, you dream about at night, and that's how it happens. I'd like to invite everyone out to see my first solo show at the Monmouth Museum. It's on the Brookdale Community Campus property in Lincroft, New Jersey. And the dates of the opening are August 14th, and it runs till September 13th. And I'm giving a gallery talk about my work on September 2nd from 7 to 8 p.m.